You're listening to the Sustainable Angler Podcast, brought to you by Emerger Strategies. I'm your host, Rick Crawford. In this episode, I interview Patagonia founder Yvon Chouinard, and we discuss disappearing into the South Pacific, changing Patagonia's mission statement, and what Patagonia is doing to fight climate change. But first, let's talk a little fishing. What was maybe your first memorable fish you caught with a fly rod, and what kind of fish was it?
I mean, I've been fishing for over 70 years. But you know, my first 17 years was with basically spinners and worms and stuff. And then I was in Jackson Hole, and I was walking by the guide shack there in Jenny Lake, and there was Glenn Exum and his son. He was teaching his son how to fly cast, and I was watching, and I didn't know Glenn or anything, but he saw me watching. He said, "Hey, come on over here, son," and he showed me how to fly cast. He gave me a few lessons, and I went out and I got a spin fish combo. You know, one of those rods where you can either spin or fly cast. And so I started taking that into the Wind Rivers. I was going into the Wind Rivers a lot, and the fishing there was, fantastic. So that's pretty much where I first started fly fishing.
Okay, great. Well, I guess what would you say in terms of, fishing freshwater species? What are some of your favorite freshwater species to catch on fly?
Well, I'd say, probably steelhead and Atlantic salmon.
Yeah.
Although I like to catch Pacific salmon too, any kind of salmon. Yeah, I mean they're bigger, but I don't go out of my way to fish for salmon that much. I mean I like to whack them and eat them. But when I do get a chance, it's pretty exciting to catch a Chinook on a fly. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so on similar lines, what about some of your favorite saltwater species?
Well, bonefish are my favorite. I've fished quite a bit with Lefty Cray, and he says his two favorite fish are smallmouth bass and bonefish. It's kind of like me. I'm a small game hunter, and I've caught a bunch of tarpon, and I've caught permit and some big trevallies, and I'm fine with that. I don't go out of my way to catch them. I really love bonefish.
All right, and so keeping on the topic of fishing before we get into a little bit more about some environmental stuff. What would you say is a perfect day of fishing for you? What does that look like?
Well, probably out on a beautiful flat somewhere without a guide, just on my own, figuring it out.
Yeah.
For me, the problem with guides is they take a lot of the fun away, and a lot of the fun is figuring it out yourself, figuring out the tides, and when to be on a certain flat at a certain time, and that kind of stuff. I thought about years ago. I thought about disappearing into the South Pacific somewhere, and on a sailboat, and just looking for the perfect bonefish flat somewhere out in Tahiti or something.
Well, I can relate. I was not on a sailboat, but I did make it to the South Pacific, and I caught some amazing bonefish in Rangiroa.
Oh yeah, yeah, I've fished there.
Yeah, and that is. I did have a guide, so I guess I lose cool points there, but
well, I done a bunch of surfing in the Tuamotus, and then there's all the islands have bonefish, but unfortunately, where you surf is the northern and western part of the islands, and that's not where the big flats are. So there's small flats and there's really big bonefish, but 9 out of 10 chances after you hook a fish, they break you off.
Right.
Too much coral, you know. It's like that in Hawaii. The last time I was in Hawaii, I hooked 10 bonefish and landed none. I lost lines. Oh my God.
Well, that's what I hear. I think or those like in Hawaii, from what I've read anyway, are like pancake flats, right? So those bonefish will take off and get deep and just break you off on coral.
Well, it depends on where you are. On Oahu, there's more sandy flats, and there's a pretty good chance you'll land one. But some of the other islands, there's some real coral around, and they're big. You know, they're all like 6 to 8 pound fish, and you know how strong those are.
Oh yeah, that's a guaranteed good time.
Yeah.
Well, I will say on the note of talking about the South Pacific and bone fishing, I want to say I read somewhere, and I can't reference where I read it. Maybe it was in one of your catalogs or something along those lines, but saying that, you know, a dream day is, you know, catching waves and surfing and then heading into the flat and catching a bonefish in the same day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just about the best. I used to do that on Christmas Island a lot. I've been there about 6 times or something, and I usually take my surfboard and when the tide's coming in, I'll surf, and then I'll go fish for bonefish the rest of the day.
Well, I've taken a little bit of that, and I'm currently on a mission to catch waves. I live in Charleston, South Carolina, and it's to catch a wave on Folly on a flood tide, and then run to the backside of Folly and catch a redfish on the flat. So I'm working on it. I'm working on it one of these days.
All right.
Well, great. Well, I'll shift gears a little bit here and you know, talk about, you know, I've read Let My People Go Surfing during my last semester of college, and you know, it really got me thinking about, you know, how to use business as a tool to solve environmental problems. And you know, one of my favorite quotes is of yours is, you know, who are businesses really responsible to? You know, their shareholders, their customers, their employees, none of the above. Fundamentally, businesses are responsible to the resource base. And so, you know, that really resonated with me, and, you know, especially working with some companies in fly fishing, you know, at the end of the day, you know, no fish equals no customers. And that quote really inspired me, and I'm curious to know, you know, maybe who are some of the people who have inspired you throughout your life, and why is that?
Well, I mean, most of what I know about the world and stuff, other than traveling on my own all over, but, you know, I'm an avid reader, and so I've read a lot of books that have inspired me. You know, a lot of, I mean, that's where I kind of get my knowledge, just from reading. I read all the time. So there's been a lot of books. I mean,
too many to list, I'm sure.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, I know that
other than, I can't say I've had any mentors, personal mentors. I mean, I've known people like David Brower and people like that, but just kind of briefly known them, not really close friends or anything. But I've certainly read a lot of his stuff and been influenced in that way.
Yeah, and that's certainly some of the, for me personally, reading your books, but also, things like John Muir and all that type of stuff. I mean, that is really that's the kind of stuff that you're tired and you can't put the book down kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, the American transcendentalists, like Emerson and Thoreau and those guys, they're all had a big influence on me, and they were certainly different than the Europeans. The Europeans pretty much still in manifest destiny, conquering the world and making it democratic, and the American philosophers were much closer to nature. I think even when the early days of this country, the European was already completely built up, pretty much. They didn't have much nature like we did.
Yeah, I've actually thought about that some. I wonder what it was like to come over and having just an unlimited, what was seemingly an unlimited supply of natural resources coming over from Europe. I mean, that's pretty crazy to think about. And now here we are in 2018, and human population's growing, and the resources getting more and more depleted. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, what would you? I don't want to lead you too much, but what would you consider to be some of the greatest threats for the planet and also that our fisheries face today?
Well, it's pretty simple. I mean, it's global warming.
So,
you can talk for hours about all the problems with us destroying nature and stuff like that, but over the whole thing is this huge cloud of, the bottom line is just this global warming. It's just everything. It's destroying the ocean, it's destroying the mountains, it's destroying agriculture. It's causing mass migrations when certain parts of the earth become uninhabitable, and it's everything. It's the number one problem, and it's this number one problem with cold water fisheries as well. I mean, I just finished writing a pretty long essay on threats to cold water fish. I've been working on a book that's selected writings over the years, and one of the last things I wrote, which I haven't published, is an essay on all the threats to cold water fish, not just global warming, but all the invasive species and diseases and everything. But the bottom line is the global warming thing, because when the water is too warm, you can't have cold water fish. It's real simple. And there's been a couple studies by different universities, and they say by probably 2050, we're going to lose about 40 to 50% of our cold water fish. That's just 30 years from now.
Yeah, and that's terrifying.
Oh yeah, it is.
As someone who, that's my generation. I have my first child on the way, and that's the world that they may be growing up in, and that's truly disturbing. But that's why we're doing what we're doing. That's why Patagonia, I think, provides a lot of inspiration for people, and that's while we're having this conversation. So hopefully we can change some minds in the process to actually do something about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm seriously thinking of changing our mission statement to basically say we're in business to save the planet.
That's in my mind. I mean, that's what y'all have done so well, is providing that inspiration and leading by example. And I think that you can use your, I mean, I'm probably telling you things you already know, but you can use your reach and your influence to cause massive waves of change and impact. So I support that.
Well, that's I've been thinking about it a lot, and if I do change it, and I'm going to go around and talk to people in the company and say, okay, if we change the mission statement to say we're in business to save the planet, how does that affect your job? And in some cases, it really affects your job. So, instead of a surfing ambassador who's a shit-hot surfer, but that's about it, you get a really good surfer who is really dedicated to also saving the planet. And that's what we've done. The last couple ambassadors that we've hired are both hired as full-time employees to go around and work on environmental stuff. So it's when you think about it that way, it really changes the way you look at your job, no matter what your job is.
Well, what's interesting is, how does that impact people's jobs? Certainly from the outset of, if you hire an ambassador, their job is then to, use their influence to create change. But are there ways that you see where it might negatively impact someone's job at Patagonia?
Well, it makes it harder.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, we made a commitment by 2025, we're not going to use any fabrics made out of petroleum. So that means, it's so easy to just call a fabric supplier, have them come by with a bunch of fabrics, and you say, yeah, give me 5,000 yards of this. But we have to develop our own fabric. And so, we're not going to be able to use polyester or nylon or rayon or any of that stuff. We're going to have to use fibers that are made from nature. And, right, and so we're working on making nylons and polyesters out of plants instead of petroleum. So I got more chemists working here than I do gardeners.
I bet you did not see that coming. Yeah, that's, on that note, I mean, that's kind of has gotten me thinking a little bit too about everything from, what we use to fish with. It seems if someone was, I don't know how to make a bamboo fly rod. I'd love to learn, but it seems like that could be the future of fly fishing. It's not as environmentally damaging. It's a natural fiber, and if you use eco resins on it, it seems like that could be a hell of a marketable product, and using something made from nature.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've got a couple trout rods, cane trout rods, and I've got a couple spey rods out of cane, and I love them. And I'm not doing it because it's more environmentally friendly. I do it because it's just feels good. I like the old school feel of them, and one is, we had a fire here this winter, and I was on the roof with my hose, and so we had to abandon the ship, and I took my passport and my one Leon Hansen 8-foot 3-weight. It's the most valuable thing I own. That was my passport. I didn't take anything else.
Well, I can relate because of Hurricane Irma here in the Southeast. I actually took a photo of the back of my car, and I left everything in the house but my wading boots and my fly rods and reels.
Is that right?
Priorities.
Yeah. But you know, I mean, that's kind of the small stuff. You know, that's kind of like, you know, switching from carbon fiber to cane. It's just like not leaving the water on when you brush your teeth. You know, it's not going to save the planet. We got to think bigger than that.
So I kind of feel like, you know, fly anglers, people who wear Patagonia for the most part, might be a little bit more in tune to, you know, what's stuff that the average Joe can do to make an impact. Do you have any insight on, hey, you know, I don't fly fish, I don't surf, I'm not an outdoor guy or girl, and but I'm concerned, and what do I do? You know, I'm cutting off the faucet when I'm shaving or my toothbrush. What can the average person do?
Well, everybody's got to ask. Nobody can tell anybody that answer. You got to ask that about yourself. Is what can you do? I mean, I personally am too embarrassed and shy, and I get too pissed off standing on the front lines in front of a bulldozer or something, you know. So I pay people to do that for me, and you know. But if you're a good writer, you need to be doing some writing and influencing people with your writings. And if you're a good public speaker, you need to speak out. Or, you know, if you got a bunch of money like I do, you got to dig deep in your pocket and give it away to somebody who's doing the good work. I mean, everybody's got to ask themselves what they can do. You know, some people have lots of free time and they can volunteer to do some good work, or I don't know. That's hard to tell anybody what they should be doing.
Sure. Well, I know, you know, Patagonia as a company has done a tremendous amount to mitigate its impacts on climate change, from everything from, you know, starting with what you can control with solar panels at your headquarters, and introducing new programs like warm wear and even new product lines like Patagonia Provisions. What would you say today that Patagonia is doing today that's going to have the greatest and lasting impact on mitigating the effects of climate change?
That's a good question. You know, I mean, all the efforts that we're doing to minimize the damage to use of natural resources in our products and stuff, like, you know, using organically grown cotton instead of regular cotton and stuff like that. All that stuff doesn't do the world any good. All it does is cause it less harm. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
And we came to that conclusion a couple of years ago, and then I started reading up about some of the discoveries that they're making through agriculture, through what's called regenerative agriculture, in capturing carbon. And I realized that that's probably our only hope. You know, we're not going to give up driving our cars. We're not going to put these oil companies out of business. We're not going to do all the hard things that we need to do to combat global warming. But the one thing that could happen is to switch over from factory industrial farming to regenerative agriculture. And, you know, regenerative agriculture is basically a form of agriculture that grows topsoil and captures carbon and produces food. So right now, you know, industrial agriculture only grows food. It doesn't capture carbon because every time you plow, you release the carbon. It doesn't grow topsoil. In fact, it destroys topsoil. You know, all life on Earth is dependent on 6 inches of topsoil. And we're losing it like crazy. By 2050, we'll have 30% less than what we have now. And so we're mobilizing not only Patagonia Provisions, but the whole company to really push this regenerative style of agriculture. And so that we can grow cotton for our clothing, but at the same time with capture carbon and grow topsoil. And so that does the world some good, not just cause less harm. So I think that's going to be our big a big effort.
So on that note, you mentioned, causing no unnecessary harm, which I know is part of your current mission statement.
Yeah, that's why I want to go beyond that. I want to do good.
What's maybe the hardest lesson, Patagonia? You sort of alluded to it earlier in the last question, but what's maybe the hardest lesson Patagonia had to learn regarding causing no unnecessary harm?
Well, I think one of the problems with society and with people in general is that they don't think deep enough. And, the Socratic method of where you go to solve a problem by just asking one question after another until you finally get to the cause of the problem. And I think society is stuck on working on endless symptoms. And so for us, once we decided that growing cotton industrially was pretty bad, we had to ask more questions. We had to ask, well, how about the dyes that we use? Are they bad? Well, we didn't know. Are all dyes bad? Are all colors bad? Or are polyester dyes better than cotton dyes? I mean, we didn't know any of this stuff. And so we just kept asking questions and asking questions and asking questions. And you can't stop. You got to, and every time you find that you're doing something wrong, stop doing it. If I was a public company, there's no way I could be doing what we're doing here. No way. Because they would say, look, don't tell me about that.
Right.
Toxic dye that you're using, just keep using it. Don't tell me about it. That's the secret of leading an exam in life, is just keep questioning.
And what would you say, I know you're not crazy about the term sustainability, from what I've read anyway, but what's been the greatest business benefit for Patagonia for running a responsible business?
Well, I can tell you, it's really good business. Our customers are really demanding that we do what we're doing. It's, about the Trump administration called for a boycott for our company because we're giving them so much shit about public lands and stuff. So they actually called for a boycott on our company. They said we're using child labor, we're making money off all this public lands, and we're not giving anything back, blah, blah, blah. The day they called for a boycott, our sales went up 600%.
Sounds like pretty good business to me.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. No, it's just good business, and I think a lot of companies don't realize that the customer has changed. These young people are different than these old white guys that are, the ones that vote these days. These young people, they're really different, and they are demanding to know where their stuff comes from and how it's made, and they're concerned about authenticity. They don't want to be bullshitted, and so they're our loyal customers. I mean, we're just growing way faster than we ever wanted to, and it's because there's just tremendous demand for what we make. We're stealing business from everybody else is what we're doing.
Well, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah. I guess.
Well, one thing that I guess I want to be cognizant of your time. But I guess in closing, what's maybe something that you wish more anglers knew about climate change, if you could leave a message for them?
Well, I wish they would just start asking questions, instead of sticking their head in the sand and just saying, oh, yeah, I know. One of the real disappointments for me is how little the outdoor industry has done for conservation. other than a few groups like, duck hunters, with Ducks Unlimited and stuff like that. But they do, the companies themselves do very, very little. And the individuals, whether they're mountain climbers or fishermen, it's unbelievable how little people do for conservation, and it's really a disappointment to me. I mean, we started this organization, 1% for the Planet. We have basically 2 fishing companies that are members out of 1,500 members. We have no hunting companies. That's pretty sad.
A couple of things that I'll say, if I may, is my company is Emerger Strategies, and we're a 1% for the Planet member.
We are.
Yeah, we sure are. And I brought one of our clients to become a 1% for the Planet member, Flood Tide Company. So I'm working on that for you.
Oh, good man. Good man.
I'm trying to make that happen. But one thing you said that I was going to close with that, but I'm engaged, so you have to pardon me here. But when you said they're not doing enough for conservation, is that in regards to donation? Is it also in regards to their own operations and products, or a combination of both?
I think it's everything. They're not doing enough to clean up their supply chain. They're not giving enough money away to conservation. I mean, you'd think that a company whose livelihood depends on having, clean wild rivers or open public lands and stuff like that would really step up and see that they have more responsibility than the average person. They don't. They really don't. It's just unbelievable. The most philanthropic people in America are the poorest.
Mm.
The poorest 10% are the most philanthropic. They give on an average of 6% of their income. The richest give less than 1%. And in the outdoor industry, I don't know what percentage it is, but it's tiny. Really
right.
tiny. At least the hunters pay a luxury tax on their guns when they buy a gun.
Yeah.
At least they get taxed for that. That's about it.
All right, and then one I thought that was my last question, but now I have one more.
Sure, go ahead.
So if you could leave a message for the folks that either read or listen to this, why is acting on climate important to you? And I'll just let you go from there.
Well, I'm not a religious person, but I'm a spiritual person, and my spirituality is based around nature. It's kind of like the Native Americans and stuff. I really love nature, and I feel like I'm part of it. And so, you destroy nature, you destroy yourself, and you destroy your grandkids and your kids, and we're all going to go down together. And as we destroy the mammals, we start with the large mammals, the rhinos and the polar bears, and you know what? We're a large mammal.
Right.
You see it right now. It's happening right now. I mean, it's just this chaos all around the world. This mass migrations of people, not only migrating because of political problems, but environmental problems, this desertification, and it's happening already. It's just we're in the middle. It's not like it's going to happen in 2100. It's happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of weird to be living in this day and age. It's kind of like the fall of the Roman Empire. Imagine what those people felt like just before the crash, or when the Soviet Union broke apart, or the British Empire. I think it's we're seeing Empire collapse right now.
Yeah, well, I've thought about that myself, actually, in terms of, do you realize that the rug's getting pulled from underneath you as it's happening? And I guess
I mean, so I got my eyes wide open, and I got my garden going.
me and you both. Well, hey, Yvon, I really I can't thank you enough for
Thanks for doing it.
For taking time to chat with me, and I really do appreciate it, and certainly appreciate everything y'all are doing as a company. Y'all are a real inspiration, and again, just thank you very much.
Yeah, well, you get back out to Wilson or Moose. We'll go fishing.
Hey, sign me up. I'm in.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
That's a wrap for the first The Sustainable Angler podcast. Appreciate you taking the time to listen. If you'd like to stay current with The Sustainable Angler, follow Emerger Strategies on social media and head over to emergerstrategies.com to sign up for our monthly newsletter. Have a good